My husband once said to me, "I can't keep pretending anymore. Your sister is the one I truly want." I replied calmly, "Then go be with her." 1 year later, I became the owner of the most successful gym in the city. What my ex-husband did when he saw me happier than ever with my new fiancé still makes me laugh. Joseph and I had been trying to have a baby for 18 months. I had planned a surprise for his birthday to tell him I was pregnant. I already had the positive test and even a list of 100 baby names ready. But then Ashley called him, my younger sister, a fitness influencer with a perfect physique and a bachelor's degree. Joseph liked almost every one of her bikini photos online, while I dressed up every evening, hoping for the same attention. "I need to talk about something," Joseph said, while casually scrolling through Netflix. "Me and Ashley talked. She's better suited for the life I want." 7 years of my effort, working overtime to pay for his community college and going through IVF treatments, meant nothing. He was ready to throw it all away because my own sister convinced him otherwise. "Then go be with her," I said, quietly through tears. He looked up from the TV, surprised. "You're just okay with this? Do you even love me?" "I do, but clearly my love isn't enough, so take your things and leave." He left that same evening to meet Ashley at a photo shoot and returned the next morning to collect his belongings. Her hair tie was on his wrist, and her lipstick was still visible on his neck. We slept in separate beds, and he lied directly to my face. But Joseph didn't realize that I had already been suspicious. Ashley had been opening up to him more than to her own friends. She often invited him to work out and even hired him as a replacement photographer for one of her shoots. Exactly 24 hours later, my mom called. "Did you hear? Joseph and Ashley are finally together. Aren't you happy for them?" 7 years of marriage seemed meaningless. A few flirtatious conversations from Ashley, and suddenly everyone said their relationship was the best thing for the family. "I'm sure you'll meet someone new," my mom added. "Ashley is just difficult to compete with." I almost told them about the baby, but instead I ended the call and focused on my pregnancy. 3 weeks later, I miscarried. The doctor said stress and complications were likely the cause. I had reached the lowest point in my life. That Monday, while driving home from work, I passed a gym. A sign on the door read, "Cleaning crew hiring, no qualifications required." With my life plans falling apart, I parked my car and walked in. The gym owner, a retired bodybuilder, looked at me and said, "You look like someone who just needs a six-pack workout and some glute training." For the first time in months, I laughed. I got the job, and in that weight room, nothing else mattered, just me and the barbell. Not Joseph, not Ashley, and not my parents celebrating their engagement. One day, I came home and saw Ashley helping Joseph pack the last of his things. "You're sweaty," Ashley said while handing me a napkin. "Stairs can be hard for certain people." They laughed at her joke. I said nothing and simply went to change while they carried the boxes to their car. The gym became my escape. Whatever money I saved, I spent on protein supplements and workout clothes that made me feel confident. The owner noticed when I reached my goal weight and offered to pay for my certification. Within 8 months, I earned my personal trainer license and started coaching women for $60 an hour. One client, Mary Ann, the wife of a real estate agent, liked my work especially. "You're inspiring," she said. "We need more people like you." She told me about an old building for sale on the edge of town that had no gym nearby. Her husband arranged a favorable deal. I invested my entire life savings and even slept on the cold floor living on canned food. But people in Mary Ann's network were already offering thousands of dollars to invest in my future gym. 2 months later, Joseph contacted me. "I saw on Instagram you're a personal trainer now. Being like Ashley won't win me back." I ignored him. At that moment, I was driving with Mary Ann to an investor meeting that would fund the equipment for my gym, $150,000 for top-quality machines. When the gym finally opened, we reached 750 members within 8 weeks. In the first 3 months alone, we made $50,000 in profit.
Marianne was amazed. "You've accomplished more than any influencer. Your sister is still posting half-naked photos for money." Soon after, invitations arrived for Ashley and Joseph's one-year anniversary. My parents begged me to attend because Joseph supposedly had something to say. I went with Dale, Marianne's nephew, a tall, educated Olympic weightlifter who admired my gym story. We had been engaged for 2 months. Joseph's reaction when he saw us was unforgettable. Dale's strong build, my visible pregnancy, and his calm confidence represented everything Joseph once claimed to want. Ashley was pregnant as well, but she looked exhausted and unhappy. She pulled me aside and whispered, "Please help me." Before she could explain further, Joseph stood up and tapped his glass. "Attention, everyone," he said. Ashley's face turned pale. "The pregnancy Ashley has," Joseph continued, "is not mine." The entire room went silent. "I'm infertile, which means the baby she's carrying belongs to someone else." Then he turned toward me. "I still love you. Leaving you was the biggest mistake of my life. I will never leave you again." He started walking toward me. Instinctively, I stepped back and placed my hand over my belly. Dale moved slightly forward, calm but protective. Joseph immediately stopped when he noticed my pregnancy for the first time. His expression changed from desperation to confusion. Dale gently squeezed my hand, reminding me to stay calm like we had discussed earlier in the car. I focused on breathing slowly, 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out, just like in my prenatal yoga class. Right then, I felt the baby move, a small flutter that steadied me. Joseph reached out his hand as if he wanted to touch my stomach or maybe just speak to me privately. The entire room watched the scene unfold. Several people were already recording it on their phones. Keeping my voice calm, I told him any future communication must happen through text or email, only in public spaces and only when others were present. His expression collapsed with disappointment, but I was not risking my baby's health for his emotional reaction. Dale and I turned and walked toward the exit. Every instinct told me to run, but we kept a steady pace. Ashley stood near the door with mascara running down her face, trying to get my attention. I kept looking straight ahead and continued walking. Once we reached Dale's truck, he helped me into the passenger seat and carefully positioned the seatbelt below my belly. The drive home was quiet, except for an old rock station playing on the radio. Neither of us talked about the chaos we had just left behind. When we got home, I opened my laptop and documented everything while it was still fresh, who said what and when, just in case we needed the information later. Dale prepared chamomile tea and brought it to me in my favorite mug, the one with my gym's logo. He kept the conversation simple, discussing the next day's gym schedule and which trainers were covering certain classes, normal topics that had nothing to do with the disaster we witnessed. I went to bed early but slept very little, thinking about what might happen next. The next morning, I called my doctor and explained the stress from the party. She examined me that afternoon and confirmed the baby was healthy, though she advised avoiding stressful situations for the next few weeks. When I arrived at the gym afterwards, it was clear that everyone already knew what had happened. Members were whispering near the water fountain and the staff looked concerned. I called a short meeting and told the team to remain professional. Our gym existed for health and training, not gossip. They all supported me. Later that day, my phone rang again, my mother. She suggested I should listen to Joseph for the sake of the family, claiming everything was a misunderstanding. I calmly ended the call. That evening, I sent Joseph a short message stating that I would only discuss necessary legal matters regarding our divorce and that all communication must remain in writing. After sending it, I blocked him on every social media platform. I walked into the weight room where Dale was cleaning equipment. He simply opened his arms so I could lean against him for a moment. Tomorrow would bring more calls and more drama, but that night I still had my gym, the business I built from nothing, and someone who understood that sometimes the best support is simply being present.
Dale said he would wait outside or stay in the car if I needed him, but he believed giving some distance would help keep everything professional. I appreciated that he thought about it carefully instead of trying to act like an overly protective boyfriend. While we were cleaning up, my phone buzzed with a message from my mom. 5 simple words that immediately made my stomach tighten. Don't destroy our family. I stared at the message for nearly a minute. That familiar sense of guilt tried to return, but I deleted the text and blocked her number for the time being. 2 days later, I woke up and noticed blood on my underwear. It was not a lot, but it was enough to send me into panic. Dale drove me to the emergency room while I tried to stay calm, convinced something might be wrong with the baby. The triage nurse admitted me quickly once I explained that I was pregnant and experiencing bleeding. They performed an ultrasound, and the doctor confirmed that everything looked normal. She explained it was likely minor spotting caused by stress. She advised me to rest more and prescribed anxiety medication that was safe during pregnancy. She also recommended finding a therapist who specialized in prenatal stress management. The following morning, I received an email from the mediator with available times for our first session. She clearly listed the rules. Everyone must focus on facts rather than emotions, no shouting or blame, and each person would have equal time to speak without interruption. Just reading those guidelines made me feel more at ease. I selected a time for the following week and forwarded the appointment details to both Joseph and Ashley. Later that day, Ashley sent a message on Instagram saying she had already agreed to take a paternity test, but asked if I would accompany her for support. I replied that the mediator would coordinate those arrangements and that it was better for us to keep some distance until then. She responded with a simple thumbs-up emoji, and the conversation ended there. The mediation appointment arrived sooner than expected. Dale drove me but remained in the car, just as we had discussed. The mediator's office was a neutral beige space designed to keep people calm. Joseph was already there when I entered, wearing a suit as if attending a job interview. The moment we sat down, he began reading from his phone, apologizing for everything, and explaining that he had been attending therapy to work on himself. However, without pausing, he quickly shifted to discussing the division of property and assets as if we were business partners ending the company. I interrupted him and stated clearly that reconciliation was not an option. Any financial matters would be handled only through our lawyers. The mediator recorded everything carefully and summarized the decisions at the end of the meeting. No contact between sessions, Ashley's paternity test scheduled for the following week, and all financial discussions handled strictly through legal counsel. We both signed a document confirming these terms. Having everything formally written down made me feel protected for the first time in weeks. That weekend, my gym hosted a charity fundraiser for a local women's shelter. I decided to attend briefly just to thank the members. As soon as I arrived, many regular members naturally formed a protective circle around me. They redirected conversations away from personal matters and politely kept curious people from asking intrusive questions. One member even stepped in front of someone who began asking about the situation and smoothly changed the topic to the new gym equipment we had ordered. Their loyalty reminded me that I had built something meaningful, something completely separate from Joseph, Ashley, or the family drama. On Monday morning, while reviewing the fundraiser totals, my phone rang from an unfamiliar number. The caller introduced herself as a reporter from a local news station. She said someone had leaked video from the anniversary party and asked if I would comment on the family situation. I gave a short response, explaining that everyone deserved privacy during difficult moments and that mental health should remain a priority. Then I ended the call before further questions. 2 days later, I sat in the forensic accountant's office reviewing complicated spreadsheets. She explained every possible outcome, from Joseph receiving nothing to a scenario where he might claim part of the gym. The worst-case situation suggested I could lose up to 30% of the business value if his lawyer somehow proved that marital assets were involved. That afternoon, I opened an emergency account and transferred $50,000 into it as a precaution. That evening, Dale found me lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. He quietly joined me and after a moment said he had been thinking about our relationship and the wedding we were planning.
He worried people might constantly compare him to Joseph and that he might never be viewed as his own person in my life. We spent 2 hours discussing the idea of slowing down the wedding plans until the legal issues were resolved. The next morning, I attended my first prenatal class at the hospital. The instructor was a small woman who had delivered 5 children herself. She spent the entire session teaching breathing techniques. She emphasized that women should advocate for themselves during birth child rather than simply accepting every suggestion from medical staff. I practiced the breathing exercises as she discussed birth plans and pain management. Every woman in the room seemed nervous, but by the end, we were all breathing in rhythm together like a small choir. 3 days later, during the next mediation session, Ashley finally broke down and admitted through tears that the baby's father was Edwin White, a photographer she had worked with during several shoots over the past year. The mediator recorded his full name and contact details while Ashley sat quietly with her hands in her lap. She explained that Edwin knew about the pregnancy, but had not yet decided how he wanted to handle the situation. The mediator promised to contact him within the week to discuss paternity testing and possible co-parenting arrangements. Watching Ashley shrink into her chair, it was clear she was beginning to face the consequences of her choices. Later that week, the mediator called to inform me that Edwin had agreed to cooperate. He had already scheduled his paternity test and was open to discussing custody arrangements once the results were confirmed. According to the mediator, he seemed to be a responsible person who would simply become involved in an unexpected situation. The following week, Joseph's lawyer sent a settlement proposal suggesting I pay Joseph $75,000 for his emotional investment in my success. My accountant laughed when she read it. She immediately prepared a response with documentation proving every dollar used to build the gym came from my inheritance and income earned after our separation. She attached bank statements, tax returns, and investment records clearly showing Joseph had no financial claim. The facts were entirely on my side, and his lawyer likely understood that. 2 days later, Ashley sent a message while I was reviewing membership contracts at the gym. She thanked me for insisting on mediation rather than letting the situation become a public court battle that might damage her influencer income. I took a screenshot of the message and forwarded it to my lawyer without replying. Later that afternoon, I attended my OB appointment where we reviewed every detail of my birth plan. The doctor explained each step carefully and entered Dale's contact information into the system as my primary support person. She gave me a folder with copies of all the documents and suggested keeping one set at home and another in the car for emergencies. Dale met me afterward and we sat in his truck reviewing the paperwork together. He programmed the hospital's direct line into his phone and made notes about the correct entrance for labor and delivery. 3 days later, we all arrived at the lab for Ashley's paternity test. Joseph provided his sample first, followed by Ashley. Edwin arrived shortly after in a rental car, clearly uncomfortable but cooperative. The technician collected cheek swabs from all of them while the mediator recorded the sample numbers and explained that the results would take approximately 2 weeks. By that point, I noticed the online gossip about our family situation had started to fade. Without new dramatic updates, people slowly lost interest and moved on to other topics.
By this point, the gossip had mostly disappeared. My gym's social media returned to normal engagement instead of people searching for scandal details. That Friday, the forensic accountant called with the preliminary financial report. She carefully explained every section, showing that my grandmother's inheritance covered the down payment while all renovation costs came from income I earned after separating from Joseph. The gym equipment had been purchased through business loans that I qualified for based on my personal training income. Joseph's name did not appear on any documents. She told me his lawyer would be unreasonable to continue pursuing claims after reviewing this evidence. The next mediation session was scheduled for Monday morning. I arrived with a full folder of financial records. Joseph sat across from me with a prepared statement that his therapist had helped him write. He read it slowly, taking responsibility for his decisions and acknowledging the harm he had caused. Notably, he did not ask for forgiveness or reconciliation. I maintained a neutral expression and simply nodded when he finished. The mediator made copies of the statement for everyone and moved the discussion to the next topic. That evening, Ashley announced on Instagram that she would be taking a break from social media to focus on her health and family. Her comment section quickly filled with speculation, but she did not respond to any of it. For the first time since the anniversary party, I noticed the tension in my chest easing. Dale observed that I was finally sleeping better and mentioned it one morning while we were preparing breakfast. Exactly 2 weeks after the test, the paternity results arrived. The mediator contacted each of us individually before the next group meeting. The results confirmed that Edwin was the father of Ashley's baby with 99.9% certainty. I felt a strange sense of relief simply because the uncertainty was resolved, even though it did not directly affect my life. Ashley and Edwin began separate mediation meetings to establish a co-parenting agreement. According to the mediator, they handled the discussion surprisingly well. They talked through custody schedules and financial support arrangements. Edwin had strong insurance coverage through his photography work and offered to include the baby on his plan. They agreed on shared legal custody. Ashley would have primary physical custody, and Edwin would spend weekends with the child once the baby was old enough. The mediator commented that their communication was actually more cooperative than many couples she worked with. Meanwhile, Joseph's lawyer finally advised him to accept the financial reality after reviewing my documentation. They proposed a settlement where Joseph would receive $5,000 as a goodwill gesture and permanently give up any claims to my business or assets. I accepted the proposal simply to close the matter quickly and secure everything legally. We met at the mediator's office on a Thursday afternoon to sign the final paperwork. Joseph's signature was unsteady, but he completed every page without argument. The mediator notarized the documents and provided certified copies to each of us. The tension I had carried for months finally disappeared. After that, I returned to my regular routine at the gym and focused on preparing for the baby. Dale attended every medical appointment with me, and in the evenings we practiced breathing exercises together. Everything felt calm and structured again. That sense of calm lasted until one morning 5 weeks before my due date while I was teaching a spin class at the gym. The first contraction was strong enough that I had to hold the handlebars to steady myself. I tried to continue the class, but the second contraction came only 3 minutes later. One of my regular members, who happened to be a nurse, immediately stepped off her bike and helped me to the office. Dale answered his phone on the first ring and said he was on his way. He arrived in about 12 minutes, staying completely calm while helping me to the truck. He grabbed the hospital bag we had prepared weeks earlier and drove quickly but steadily while I focused on breathing through the contractions. When we arrived at the hospital's emergency entrance, the staff followed the birth plan we had already submitted. They placed me in a room immediately as the contractions continued to intensify. A nurse examined me and said I was already 6 centimeters dilated, which explained the intensity of the pain. Dale stayed beside me, holding my hand and counting through each contraction while I focused on the breathing techniques we had practiced. Several hours passed, with nurses checking monitors and adjusting equipment. Around the 8th hour, progress slowed and the baby's heart rate dropped slightly. The medical team moved quickly. The doctor explained that a C-section might become necessary if labor did not progress soon. I squeezed Dale's hand and concentrated on pushing whenever the staff instructed. After several more hours of pushing, repositioning, and assistance from a vacuum device, the delivery finally progressed. At 3:47 a.m., our daughter was born and immediately placed on my chest. Dale became emotional when she wrapped her tiny fingers around his hand. The nurses cleaned and weighed her, while the doctor treated the tearing from delivery. She weighed 7 pounds and 2 ounces and was completely healthy despite arriving early. Later that night, while Dale slept in the chair beside my bed, I sent Ashley a brief message. I simply wished her a safe delivery when her time came and encouraged her to take care of herself. She read the message but did not reply, which I understood. We stayed 2 more nights in the hospital, learning basic newborn care,
diapers, swaddling, and feeding routines. When we finally returned home, I found containers of food stacked on our porch. My gym staff had organized a meal schedule without telling me. There were casseroles, soups, and salads, all labeled with heating instructions. I texted my assistant manager the login details to the scheduling system and asked her to manage operations for the next 2 weeks. She replied with a simple thumbs up and told me not to worry about anything. 3 weeks later, I attended the final mediation session. I would have preferred to stay home with the newborn, but it was necessary to complete the process. Dale waited in the lobby with the baby while I went inside. Joseph looked different, calmer, and more composed. He told the mediator he had started attending therapy twice a week and enrolled in an HVAC technical certification program. The divorce papers were prepared in advance, and he signed them without disagreement. When the process ended, I felt an unexpected sense of relief. 2 months later, Ashley had her baby. She sent me a photo of a small boy wrapped in a blue blanket. The message simply said, "Thank you for suggesting mediation instead of a court fight. We may not be friends, but at least we are not enemies." Eventually, I began bringing my daughter to the gym during early morning members-only sessions, since there was a quiet room available for nursing. The business continued to operate smoothly, while my team handled most daily tasks and I supervised remotely. My parents called asking to visit. I agreed, but set clear conditions: 2 hours maximum, no discussion about Joseph or Ashley, and the visit would focus only on meeting their granddaughter. They arrived on time and followed every rule, which surprised me. My mother held the baby and talked about her knitting projects, while my father took dozens of photos. When the 2 hours were over, they left peacefully, without argument. That weekend, Dale and I sat on the floor surrounded by baby clothes we had received as gifts. Dale mentioned that we could think about getting married next year, or whenever it felt right. There was no pressure, only the idea of building a future together, step by step. We both understood that we had time to figure everything out. And that is where things stand now. Thank you for staying with me through the entire story. If you made it to the end, feel free to leave a comment. I always enjoy reading your thoughts.